Microphone on, camera on. Welcome to the Hardiac channel. Quick thing before I start, just in case you hear noise, I've got company here at my home, so you may end up hearing some stomps from upstairs or whatever it may be. So getting into this video, I would like to tell you that this Hardiac channel, I'm going to see if I can start a every weekday schedule where I upload one video every single day, or every single weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then Saturdays and Sundays I'll have off or for whatever else. So, the title of this is obviously 10 reasons why the early 1990s were better than the early 2010s. And let me tell you this. I may have been born in 1996, but I hold a strong love for almost everything 90s. 90s music, 90s TV, 90s film, excuse me, even 90s wrestling. And I stumbled upon this on whatculture.com, and all things on this list are on the list made by whatculture.com, and all information that I've gotten for this video is brought to you by whatculture.com, so thank you to them. And yeah, the 90s were so much better, and the 2010s are just shit. So, at the age of 19, I'm going back to the decade in which I was born in to see why that decade was better than the decade that I currently live in. So, whatculture.com, 10 reasons the early 1990s were better than the early 2010s. And the subtext says, you had to be there. So, I will read this. Let's say your crazy inventor friend has built a flying DeLorean and, due to an unfortunate series of events, you're stranded in the early 1990s. Your hometown looks the same, but there are little differences. People aren't walking down the street talking on phones. Nobody walks into you while texting, and you don't hear a ringtone every 5 seconds. In fact, there are hardly any phone stores. You can sit at a cinema without the guy 3 rows in front of you updating his status, checking the time, or taking photographs during the talky parts. There are 10 movies on 10 screens, and not every one is a sequel, a remake, or a superhero flick. Hell, some were even made for adults. Back home, the lack of social media means that people sit in front of their other idiot box, the television, or that other idiot box, the television. The shows are quieter and less frenzied than you're used to, and the movies, while edited for language and violence, are more coherent. When a night out beckons, you can go to see a performer who isn't a micro celebrity or a manufactured pop sensation. Most of the bands are young and hungry, not tired old men on the comeback trail. There are many reasons why the 1990s were better than the 2010s, and here are 10 of them, or 10 of those reasons. Number 10, movies had more impact. Assuming you were alive, you probably don't remember what you were doing on the day Pulp Fiction came out, but you damn sure remember the buzz that surrounded its release. I swear I will break you. Time edits out the clunkers and embarrassments, so it's easy to glamorize the past and forget that the Leprechaun made more money than the Reservoir Dogs. But movies had more impact back then. They left a cultural footprint, as it were. To illustrate the point, Pulp came out to great reviews and saturation advertising, winning Quentin Tarantino a screenwriting Oscar in the process. But more than that, it was an event. 18 years later, Django Unchained came out to great reviews and saturation advertising, winning Quentin Tarantino a screenwriting Oscar in the process. But you knew it'd be available on Netflix in a few months, assuming it wasn't already streaming on pirate sites. Next up, number 9, there was less emphasis on the past. Popular history teaches us that the Cold War ended in 1991, and with it came a renewed determination to plow forward, away from a past that seemed awkward and embarrassing. George W. Bush, a fixture at the White House since 1981, gave way to Bill Clinton, who, if nothing else, had a novel way of storing his cigars. You will fuck off or I will break you. You fucking bastard. Sorry about that. The popular culture changed too. Yuppies gave way to long-haired musicians, grunge and rap seized the music charts, and on TV, two FBI agents named Mulder and Scully told Americans not to fear the Russians, but little gray men instead. Nobody could have predicted American Idol. Somewhere along the way, the change stagnated, and the stagnation led to the cannibalizing of the past. While HBO screens documentaries about Kurt Cobain and Fox prepares to reboot The X-Files, the world gears up for the 2015 summer blockbusters, which includes sequels to Jurassic Park and The Terminator, as well as another Fantastic Four movie. Number 8, filmmakers had personalities. In the early 1990s, Hollywood hadn't yet fully succumbed to McDonaldization and begun cranking out one uniform picture after another. True, there were plenty of catastrophes. Remember Bruce Willis on in Color of the Night? But there were also filmmakers whose personalities shone on film. Whether or not you care for the movies of John Landis, Joe Dante, John Carpenter, Kevin Smith, Paul Verhoeven, and Robert Rodriguez, you have to admit that they don't make bland product. The films they make reflect their own obsessions and insecurities, which is what makes them memorable. Hollywood in the 2010s is all about uniformity of product. When everything's the same, new content is easier to create. So Marvel can create a 5-year plan in much the same way that episodic television plots out a new season. And just like TV, there will be nothing that distinguishes one episode from the next. Number 7, reality TV hadn't yet conquered the world. Reality TV didn't truly take off until the 90s/early 2000s. When advances in technology enabled producers to shoot fast and edit quickly, if you were watching a program in the early 90s, it was probably Cops, which at least has the distinction of being mentioned in Pulp Fiction. Post-2000, however, the shows seemed designed to appeal to the supporting cast of Deliverance. My mind is off right now. Big Brother, Survivor, The X Factor, America's Next Top Model, and Project Runway all should have, according to physical laws, knocked the world off its axis. Worse, they elevated the profiles of Brooke Hogan, Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, and other non-entities who are, to paraphrase Warren Ellis, very much like an appendix. You ignore them until they bother you, then remove them with a sharp knife. Number 6. Piracy was less of an issue. In the early 90s, there was no download sites or YouTube, so if you were watching a movie illegally, that meant you knew somebody that knew somebody who had 2 VCRs. That was how you stole movies back then, by duplicating the movie onto a blank video cassette. Fast forward 2 decades, and the sheer availability of pirated films is mind-boggling. Within a few hours of its release, any title is available to watch online, and as usual, it's the little movies that suffer. Films in the $5 to $20 million bracket simply aren't being funded anymore, because the reality is that they will be stolen before they can recoup their costs. Whether you prefer the practice of uploading copyrighted material as file sharing or piracy doesn't matter, because the results are already apparent. The only projects that excite studios are billion-dollar franchises that tie in with books, CDs, video games, and TV shows, making you wonder about the possibility of $200 million movies being lost leaders for the merchandise. Number 5. Michael Moore was funny. Back in the days before he became a Cannes-feted Oscar-winning multimillionaire simply by preaching to the converted, Michael Moore hosted TV Nation, the kind of satirical news shows that could only have aired during the Clinton administration. Together were presenters Janine Garofalo, and Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux. The show followed the Ku Klux Klan as they attempted to rebrand themselves as a civil rights group for white people, convinced members of the Michigan militia to ride a Ferris wheel while singing Kumbaya, and sent a gay men's choir to sing outside the house of a homophobic senator. Best of all were the segments featuring Crackers, the corporate crime-fighting chicken, a 7-foot chicken who questioned New York's mayor about shady tax breaks, exposed banks that charged exorbitant fees, and investigated a lead factory whose runoff was poisoning a nearby town's water. Number 4. Number 4, nobody was on Facebook. That's an interesting meme. This may come as a surprise, but there was a time when people didn't pause outside every building they visited, photograph it with their phone, and upload an image to Facebook with the words, "Guess where I am." Few realize, but social media is a part of a CIA-sanctioned plot to lower standards and dull sensations ahead of a full takeover by the pod people from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When creatures from another world replace monosyllabic idiots whose only function is to post funny cat videos, nobody will be any the wiser. And that's not being overly harsh. According to the study by Union College in New York, heavy Facebook users are more likely to be insecure and narcissistic. A lack of likes and comments is enough to drive them to despair, causing the rest of us to want to wonder why they didn't just leave the house and speak to another human being. Number 3. Blockbusters were made for adults. Before multiplexes became off limits to anyone out of their early 20s, the most expensive movies weren't PG-rated comic book movies, but R-rated comic book movies that weren't afraid to get seriously violent and seriously sleazy. Imagine Marvel Studios blowing $400 million on an Avengers movie where limbs are torn off, bodies are shredded, and the women get naked a lot. And you've got a fair idea of where the world was at in 1990. That was the year of Die Hard 2 and Total Recall, both of which cost a then unheard of $70 million and featured the kind of violence that causes Republicans to foam at the mouth. They were based on books rather than comics, video games, or theme park rides, and their idea of playing it safe was product placement for USA Today. A year later, the R-rated Terminator 2 Judgment Day became the first movie to cost more than $100 million. This is the Arnold Schwarzenegger that people will remember, not the 67-year-old going through the motions in Terminator 5. Number 2, Bill Hicks was alive. Aw. You hear it said that nobody could replace so-and-so, or that such and such was a one-off. But in the case of Bill Hicks, it was true, and 2 decades after his death, his brand of outsider comedy has never been equaled. Never mind bettered. It's been ripped off by Dennis Leary and others, but when it comes to expressing frustration at an increasingly frustrating world, nobody's funnier. Playing to small audiences, he ranted against corporations before it became fashionable, claiming that advertisers and marketers were in league with the devil. Then along came Michael Bay to prove him correct. While his colleagues told jokes about airline food, Hicks tackled everything from abortion to the run-up to the Gulf War, as his views on the latter caused walkouts. One 1990 routine has him impersonating a general arguing for war because Iraq has incredible weapons. When pressed, the general admits that he only knows that because we looked at the receipt. And finally, number 1. Justin Bieber hadn't been born yet. Thank gosh. One of Bill Hicks' funniest routines is a diatribe against manufactured pop acts whose soulless banality is mistaken for wholesomeness. Hicks names New Kids on the Block, but it doesn't really matter who you use to illustrate the point. The names may change, but the mediocrity stays the same. Ironically, he was speaking at a time when the New Kids' popularity was in decline and several iconic bands were on the rise. To name a few: Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Faith No More, The Prodigy, Primal Scream, Radiohead, The Stone Roses, Cypress Hill, Pearl Jam, and Rage Against the Machine. Several of these bands are, in one guise or another, still performing, or at least milking the nostalgia factor. Sadly, not Nirvana. But not only will they never recreate former glories, there isn't a single act who could be considered their modern equivalent. Meanwhile, albums by Justin Timberlake and Taylor Swift are among the best-selling titles of the 2010s by far. Can you say soulless banality, people? I barely could. And that's it. That was 10 reasons the early 90s were better than the early 2010s. I really liked this this story, and the reason why is because so many kids and teenagers nowadays who were either born in the 2000s and are growing up in the 2010s, or are born right before the 2010s or whatever, and are now growing, going through their childhood in the 2010s, they don't understand that so many things from nowadays weren't there back in the 90s and in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and 50s and so on and so forth. Facebook wasn't a thing, Twitter wasn't a thing, Instagram wasn't a thing, YouTube wasn't a thing. If we were in 1996, let's say I was 19 at 1996, which would have had been born in what, 1977? Let's say I was making a YouTube video, or at 19, let's say this right now, me making a YouTube video right now, in 1996, you wouldn't be watching it. I wouldn't be filming it because there was nothing to put this up to. Nobody would hear your voice. There was no social media sharing websites. If there were, it was some new thing that people just, I don't fucking know. There was no such thing as YouTube. I can't even explain some of the things because I've kind of just gotten so used to the 2000s and the 2010s. I grew up in 2000s and kind of, I think it was, what was it, the 2010s where I started my teenage years. Technically, I'm still in my teenage years because I am 19, but I'm an adult. But through all of that, there was not such things that you had in 2010 that you have in 2010s that you had in the 90s. Grunge was at the top of the charts in the early 90s. And for those fucks who listen to synthetic pop music and crappy hip-hop music from some egotistical maniacs or any pop singers or hip-hop singers that walk into a studio and perform whatever their directors or producers hand them, whatever music or whatever words they put on a piece of paper and give it to that artist, and they have them sing it. That was just, though, the kids that listen to that crap more than likely don't know what 90s grunge was or 90s alternative rock. Alternative rock was, you had bands like they listed Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Stone Temple Pilots and Rage Against the Machine and so many other great bands. Not just grunge, but alternative rock bands in general, or rock bands in general. So many great. Fuck. I'm sorry. I've lost my train of thought. The 90s were better than the 2010s. Fuck you, people. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Anything else I have to say? Well, I'm gonna try the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday upload schedule, and then Saturday and Sunday I'll have off. I don't know when I'll upload videos to this channel or what time of those days I'll upload the videos to the channel. More than likely they'll be live streams. But yeah, so you guys watching, subscribe to the channel, please. Yeah, subscribe to Unitards, my primary channel. That is Unitards, UNITARDZ. that's the YouTube channel. You'll see my face, and I'll probably have glasses on if that's my profile picture. And that's it. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, like, favorite, and subscribe for more. I'm Zach Hardy, signing off.